Here.
Councilor Martino?
Here.
Councilor Rell?
Here.
Councilor Roberts?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Barry?
Here.
And Mayor Montanari?
Here.
Thank you.
Jeff Bridges is going to start with just a summary of some of the specific increases and decreases since the last public hearing that were discussed over the last several weeks. So, Jeff, it's in your hands.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you on the podium this evening are three documents. One is a spreadsheet showing the revenues that have been amended since the manager's proposed budget hearing, and we'll go over that in a minute. The next page are expenditures, which include the adjustments made by the council so far, or proposed by the council so far, since the manager's budget presentation. And the third document is the motions for this evening that adopt the budget in its component parts. I would just say the first, second, and third motions are what we would call amendment motions. These are motions on behalf of the town council that amend specific portions of the manager's budget prior to the remaining motions which effectuate adoption of the budget in its component parts. So what we'll do is, by looking at the motions, we can look at the modifications to the manager's budget. So if you follow along on the spreadsheet and on the screen this evening, right now are revenues. So that first motion, which adjusts the revenues from the manager's proposed budget, we'll go over those. Of course, the tax number's not something you vote on specifically, but that's a function of the other adjustments we've done in revenues, which reduce the levy for, in replace of the other revenues we've accumulated. $60,000 adjustment, that's additional building permit fees we anticipate for the upcoming year due to some larger projects that still need to pull mechanical, electrical, and plumbing permits. Based upon the state budget, the Pequot funding went down $749 from what we estimated in the budget. We are estimating $50,000 in additional revenue sharing from the state for next year. An increase of $43,491 from the adopted budget for state-owned property, for pilot for state-owned property. $157 for pilot for state colleges and universities, which will be receiving. And the ECS funding, the final number came in $47.89 higher than what was originally projected. Finally, based upon some conversations we had through the budget workshops, the council would like to use the surplus fund balance, or the fund balance we budgeted for this fiscal year, lapse it into next year to do other capital improvements, so that $300,000 of revenue is placed in next year's budget. So those adjustments to the manager's budget are included in the first motion. Okay. Are there any questions on those? Okay. Going into the second motion are adjustments to the expenditures. The difference between the proposed budget and what the council has worked on over the past several weeks. So we start at the top. At the town council, we had a discussion about some funding to outside agencies. And based upon discussions we had with the Social and Youth Services Director, there's some additional funding. Let me open up this note here. Intercommunity Mental Health and North Central Regional Mental Health, Kathy Bagley is recommending we provide some funding to, as requested, and we've eliminated cost as membership. So the net of those three numbers is an increase of $46.41 to the town council's budget. For some reason, we fund those outside agencies in the council budget. We've always done it that way. We can change it, but we left it there for now. $4,800 in the manager's budget. That was a number we left out of the proposed budget, so we're putting that back in. Probate court is up $500. We got their letter. We won't know what our actual levy is until they figure out where everybody stood with their grand list. Their budget went up slightly. Our number was based upon the current year number, so we just put $500 in it to make sure we had enough to cover probate court. The following two numbers, central office services and the tax collector, those are for the postage question we had. We saw significant increases in postage. So Mike O'Neill, the new finance director, adjusted those out today, or is recommending we adjust those out today. We're recommending an additional $3,000 in physical services to cover some painting items in the police station, so we have some materials to paint the interior of the police station. This number is not included, this adjustment for the Board of Ed is not included in the second motion. That's a separate motion. The $498 for the debt service, we talked about how we weren't going to go ahead and bank debt service funds for future increases, so we've adjusted that number out, leaving in sufficient debt service for the project that we anticipate needing for next year. And then the $300,000 of fund balance that we're lapsing, we're putting towards the capital budget as transfers to the capital budget. So those changes are, then finally, the town council also wanted to add $300,000 to roads. That number's been put in there also. So that's the second motion. Are there questions on those? Okay.
Thank you, Jeff, for putting that together. Appreciate that. I believe, Jeff, just before we go to any motions, just want to summarize based on the changes since our last public hearing with the town. So.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk a little bit about the process. The process for the council actually began really before the manager gave us his budget. A number of members of the Budget and Finance Committee, including Councilor Hurley and Councilor Martino, as well as you, Mayor, attended the Board of Education workshops, I think 4 of them, which was really, I think, unprecedented to attend actually all of their workshops. We also met with the library board as well, because remember, those are 2 budgets where we approve a line item, but we don't approve specific numbers within those line items. So we wanted to make sure that we understood their budget well. So we want to thank the Board of Ed, thank the library board for their ability to allow us to peer into their budgets. There are a few items in here that the town manager just spoke about. We do have another $300,000 that we're setting aside for roads in the budget. I think that's in recognition that we did have an awful winter. We've set aside $100,000 out of contingency to patch up to roads this spring, but we really need to really get behind improving our roads in town. And the $1.2 million, which we've appropriated the last few years, while certainly up from previous years, we just don't think is getting the full job done. So we're looking at $1.5 million, including town and state money. The town manager mentioned earlier the $300,000 from fund reserve that we're not anticipating spending in the current budget. That will allow us to repave the Highcrest lot, which now that we're done with Webb, is the worst parking lot in town that's owned by the town. May also allow us to do some other site work there. The Board of Ed increase is 3.2%, which is actually a little bit below the town and a little bit below certainly below the road increase. So we're reducing the Board of Ed budget based on the motions that are before us by nearly $300,000. We want to thank the Board of Ed for their input along the way. We believe it'll allow the Board of Ed to go forth with a couple of their key initiatives, including security director, a math curriculum supervisor. But we understand that there are also some painful reductions that they're needing to make, including eliminating a number of paraprofessional jobs. Additionally, we are pleased that the board is able to use money from this year's budget to replace the Hanmer burners, which is definitely needed and to ensure that next winter the Hanmer school stays warm. So I'm glad they were able to do it out of this current year's budget. And it contributed to the reduction to the reduction of nearly $300,000 for next year's budget. Turning to the library, a couple of things. For a very modest sum, we're going to be able to extend library board says with the allocation that we're going to be looking at tonight, they would be able to stay open on Sundays in June and September in addition to October through May. So that means we'd be open on Sundays during the entire school year. It'll also allow them to accelerate replacement of some very heavily used computers, public computers at the library, which have, been breaking down a bit, much to the distress of some of our residents. A couple of other things. There's, this town, regardless of whether the Republicans or the Democrats are in leadership, the town recognizes its obligations to fund future pension and retiree health benefits. I think a lot of towns in the state have not taken as responsible an approach as Wethersfield has. So one driver of the increase in spending this year is to fully fund our pension program, which we're doing based on this budget. And it's also, last year, we put in a program to catch up and fund our very significant retiree health benefit obligations. And the plan that was put in effect by the last council is being continued by this council. So, as we go out and we issue bonds to help pay for the schoolwork, rating agencies are going to be satisfied and comforted by the fact that we don't kick the can down the road. We do meet our retirement obligations. Finally, some thanks in addition to the Board of Ed and the superintendent and his staff. I just want to thank Jeff Bridges and our new finance director, Mike O'Neill, and the various department heads for really helping us through this budget. We did a full court press, a very long Saturday, and some other meetings on the budget to make sure that counselors, whether they're new or veteran on the council, understand this budget. I just want to also thank the Republicans on the council for making a number of suggestions that are being that we support, some of which include not setting aside a debt service reserve this year in light of the fact that we're going through a statistical reassessment. And also I want to thank them for the comments they had in support of during one of our budget meetings on the resource officer for the middle school. If we take a look at the schools, the board expects to add a security director for the school system. We expect to be able to add a resource officer at the middle school for the first time halfway through the school year. And I think the realities of life today indicate that we do have to take school security extremely seriously and address the needs. So that's just sort of a summary of what we've been through the last few months, and I just want to thank everybody for the professionalism that everybody approached this budget.
Thank you, Jeff.
At this point, barring any further comment, we'd look to have motions as provided on the document.
Quick question, if I may. Where do these numbers compare to, remember those 18 options we had at the last meeting? So I'm trying to follow the change, and I'm not quite there yet. So where is that? So where's like option 19 then?
This is option 19.
Okay, so.
And it's a modification, basically, of option 16.
All right.
Okay, option 16, as you remember, had the Board of Ed reduction number at 223.5.
Yep.
So we've increased that to 291 after conversations with the superintendent, and then we tweaked the other numbers, the municipal revenue sharing number, and the town council, town manager, and physical services numbers. Those other little tweaks. So this is all basically a modification of option 16.
Okay. So the only difference is the reduction in the increase to the Board of Ed and the additional revenue.
The additional
and
revenue.
the expense changes.
And those smaller expense changes in motion. Yeah.
Right. So net of the $300,000 increase that we talked about, these others are kind of new. So another 157, 158,000 and additional revenue.
No. I
Right?
think we
Yeah,
saw,
if you add all those, the first motion is on revenues, right?
right, I think the only difference really from the last workshop meeting was the $50,000.
Yeah.
That's the only difference in revenue. Everything
Oh, so
else
you mean-
was,
So the pilot and the mesh, or,
yeah, all those were adjusted for the options we saw last time.
so, okay, well, it still doesn't seem to make sense then. All right. Okay. That's a net of 157. Well, okay.
Whatever that number was.
So if you back out the 300 from okay, so everything except that, the municipal revenue share was there.
Yes,
In the line item number 16.
in all of,
In all of
on all 18 options you looked at
Okay.
before.
Set? Okay, so I want to move those motions in order, so we're going to start with number 1. Jerry?
Move that the budget is submitted by the town manager April 7th, 2014, be and hereby is amended as follows. Increase $60,000 in account 41203 Building Department. Decrease $749 in account 42610 Mashantucket Pequot Grant. Increase $50,000 in account 426XX Municipal Revenue Sharing. Increase $43,491 in account 42501 Pilot for State-Owned Property. Increase $157 in account 42502 Other State Grants. Increase $4,789 in account 43001 Education Cost Sharing. Increase $300,000 in account 49002 Surplus Prior Years.
Second?
Thank you. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Number 2,
Motion that the budget is submitted by the town manager April 7, 2014, be and hereby is amended as follows. Increase $4,641, account 110, town council. Increase $4,800, account 120, town manager. Increase $500, account 170, probate. Decrease $3,009, account 240, tax collector. Decrease $8,600, account 250, central office services. Increase $3,000, account 520, physical services. Decrease $498,000, account 920, debt service. Increase $300,000, account 950, transfer to capital projects fund.
Second.
thank you. A motion and a second. Any questions, comments?
Just
Mike?
one. The account 520, physical services, the $3,000, that was the police station painting?
Yeah, we're painting offices as we go, and this is for materials,
Okay.
paint and new,
What was the year the police department was completed?
2003. We're in the process now of painting the community room, and we've done some work, but there's no materials budget for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
The police budget does include an extra several $1,000s for carpet, for new carpet in there too, so we're trying to keep it fresh.
11 years old, still pretty fresh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to 3.
Move that the budget is submitted by the town manager April 7, 2014, be and hereby is amended as follows, to decrease the total appropriations for school purposes by $291,071.
Second?
Motion and a second. Questions, comments? Don?
Just, I can't support this motion, and just to give, when we had discussed the 18 options, was comfortable with option 18 as it was laid out Tuesday, Thursday.
I think it was Thursday.
So just my comments.
Thank you, Don. Mike?
I'll just kind of expand on Donna's comments. I'm in the same boat as her. I just thought, we're gonna put more money into the roads, that maybe we should have cut back somewhere to help offset that tax levy that's gonna happen on the people who can't afford it.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I think when we looked at this, I just don't think we've made any difficult decisions here. I think all this was just low-hanging fruit. It was just through the budget process. There were natural reductions. So when you look at this reduction in the increase, this really had no pain or a real in-depth analysis of the budget the way it was presented. In the first go-around, there was a decrease, a natural decrease, I guess, in the insurance line item. We had that twice, if I remember right. So in the first one, there was a reduction of, I think, 150,000, is that right?
135.
135. So rather than taking that whole reduction and proposing the first, or that round of Board of Ed budget with that full reduction, there was some added back in
No,
to,
excuse me, the 135 was at our meeting with the Board of Ed, sorry.
yeah, so at that Board of Ed, so that whatever that reduction was at first, it wasn't fully taken, and it was added back. And it's just maybe coincidental that it's pretty close to what this additional reduction is here. So to me, the optics of it make it look like there was a reduction in the increase that was significant, but I just don't see that it is. I think Mike Hurley, Councilor Hurley had mentioned it in the last meeting, that there were certainly line items that warranted, I think, some further reductions, and I think some members of the board, would probably believe that as well, from the comments I heard. So that's why I can't support this either.
Thank you, Steph.
No, I just had a quick concern as well. The security director is included in this 291,000. What was, if I remember correctly, there was something taken out for special ed transportation costs? If I'm not mistaken.
Jeff, you recall the amount that we did at the final?
My recollection is the board, when we met with them, they had 3 different reductions that they had agreed to, subsequent to sending us over their budget. One, as Stothy says, was the $135,000 for the town's share of the healthcare costs. The number was actually bigger, but some of the savings go back to the employees, because they pay for up to close to 20% of their healthcare costs. So we couldn't take the full amount because it's not the town savings. Another was that they had over budgeted for diesel fuel by about $40,000. And the other I mentioned earlier was another $48,000, where they're basically replacing the burners down at Hanmer out of this year's budget rather than next year's budget. So when we met with them, they said, the superintendent said he had more or less $223,000. With this, the 291, we're basically saying to the board, we think you can go another $68,000 beyond that. Find it somewhere out of your budget, and we've been told that they should still be able to fund the security director even with that additional $68,000 reduction. So where that's going to come from, I don't know if I know there was a question as to whether they had over budgeted for school transportation. I don't know if that's where the Board of Education is going to make the change, or if it's going to be some other line item. But we did go back and say, we would like to get, I don't want to use the royal we, not all 9 of us, but I did go back and say, can you live with a 0.2% increase in the budget? Originally, we were hoping it was going to be 3 flat. I think sitting through the budget sessions of the Board of Ed, Counselor Hurley sat through a number of them, has a little different opinion tonight than the rest of us on this side do. But listening to what they're looking at, we thought a 3.2% reduction would be fair. 3 flat, we thought would probably go a bit too far. But, the board's going to have to go back and adjust their budget down for the things we know about, as well as another $68,000 somewhere else.
All right, so I guess my concern would be that 68,000 somewhere else, if we don't have that in front of us right now. Makes it difficult to justify supporting it.
The superintendent said he could get it done. So I would not, I wanted to ensure that they felt that they could manage that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
The other thing is, my understanding was there was a meeting between the superintendent and someone on council, and that was agreed to, that it would come out of the
It was a phone call.
budget? So is that the nature of the conversation, that he said it would come out of that line item?
I didn't ask him where it would come out of. That's not our role to decide what the line items they change.
So can you tell us maybe what the nature of the conversation was?
Yeah, I'll restate what I said 2 minutes ago. I asked if the school system could fund their programs adequately with 3.2% increase in their budget, rather than, I think, prior to the 68,000, it was somewhere around 3.5-ish, somewhere around there. It's a pretty quick conversation.
Thank
So
you.
was it just, you were the only one that met with him?
It was a phone call, Stothy.
Yeah. So just you, I mean, nobody else talked to him, or there was no other conversation with anybody else privately with him? That may have
He
been
called
done?
me to give me his number.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'm just going to comment, I do think that there was a number of meetings where we looked into the line items with the budget and with the town, with the board and with the town. And frankly, the reality was, at our meeting on Thursday, the difference between items or options 16 and 18 was very, very small, to be frank. And I think both sides of this council, I think, worked hard, and I don't think I think hard decisions were made by both sides of the aisle, and I do think it's unfair to say that it was just low-hanging fruit. Frankly, we were, both sides, very close in the cuts that we all talked about. So I don't see it that way.
Thank you. I'll make one quick comment about it, just to add, and I think we can move to the vote. But, I think we had, again, a lot of dialogue from the full council during the course of the last 90 days. I know we've had several conversations with individual board members, the superintendent's talked with finance chairs, as well as our current staff, and we also obviously had some, Jeff Bridges and Mike also talk. So, we have approached it, I think, philosophically beyond the communication and the dialogue. We have approached it with respect to the line item decisions that have been made from the original budget that was submitted back in March, and then weaned since that, with the thinking process that the board would guide us where those cuts were going to come as we had more conversation. And we've adhered to that throughout the conversations with them, and I feel like that's something that I think we've stated and we feel is important, that the cuts themselves, where they come from and how they come, my preference has been since the beginning to look to the board to provide that direction, and they have obviously stepped up since that time. So is it perfect? No, but we also understand that preserving the programs of the Board of Education was paramount in our minds, and $291,000 in cut comes with some strain, I think, frankly, based on my conversations with the superintendent, that it's tight, and we're trusting their judgment to get it without sacrificing any of the initiatives that I think they placed as a priority as early as March. So we appreciate those efforts, and I appreciate the counterpoint of view as well. I mean, I don't think we're far apart from each other, but obviously we hoped that everybody would get to the same point, and we still feel that way. But we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
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 You have that, Dolores, in
Yes,
terms
I
of
do.
count? Any abstentions? Thank you. Moving to 4.
Move that the total appropriations for school purposes be set at $54,797,197 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Obviously, this number reflects incorporating number 3 into the final number that was originally submitted, reflects that change. Questions?
I had a comment kind of based on what everybody was talking about. And, I mean, at the last meeting, it didn't have to do with the budget, but there was some discussion that you guys were in charge now and you get to do what you want to do. So I kind of took that, you know, whatever you guys put forth as the budget, that would be it. You did say that it would be bipartisan going forward, but at that last meeting, you kind of got a little angry and said that, you know, we're in charge now and we get to do what we want to do. I just kind of wanted to mention that.
And if I can step in on that, that conversation, that certainly was not discussed in the context of budget, and I'd never heard the word "we're in charge now" or anything like that. So it really, I think that's an unfair statement.
I don't think it's unfair at all.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second in front of us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Abstentions?
Can we have a roll call on that?
Sure.
Counselor Hammond,
No.
Counselor Hurley,
No.
Counselor Kotkin,
Yes.
Counselor Menounos,
No.
Counselor Martino,
Yes.
Counselor Rowell,
No.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barry,
Yes.
and Counselor Montanari.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion number 5.
I move that the town council adopt the town budget as submitted by the town manager on April 7th, 2014, and as amended by the town council in the sum of $91,926,784, not including state grants of $8,978,092 for the high school renovation project for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2014.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Comments or questions? Jeff.
Just a clarification. It's this number here, which does not include the road number. The road number will be a separate motion. Okay,
Can I just ask a question, Paul?
Of course.
And maybe it doesn't need to be put before the vote for the, that's coming from the state for the high school renovation. Should that be before this number, or no, it doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter, because this number doesn't include that number.
Okay,
We've netted out that whole thing separate from
okay,
the calculations.
If there were any change in the state number, we
Okay.
have them out. But that's a great question. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second with respect to town. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
no.
No.
Abstentions? Motion passes. Number 6.
Move that the total appropriations for the capital and non-recurring road fund be set at $907,978 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second?
Thank you. Questions about the road fund?
I think maybe, Jeff, you can make it clear that this is the town's contribution, that with the state's contribution, it would be,
Yeah, the total fund would be $1.5 million. The other portions of this are made up from state grants for capital improvement purposes.
thank you.
Questions? Don?
Just a comment. I think this is the right thing to do for the roads. We had a very bad winter, and we've really worked hard to maintain the roads at with the 1.2 million. This just bumps it up a little bit to 1.5 million, and I'd like to see us keep it there so that we can do a bit more each year and try to improve. I think it's more than just staying flat. I think we need to make some progress.
Thank you, Don. I agree with that, of course. And as Jeff Cochran pointed out, I appreciate the dialogue last week with the full council on this topic. There was clearly a consensus of the need to put more resources into the roads, not just because the year was awful, but because we, obviously with reval, we wanted to offer something to our community to show for their tax efforts. And we know we've slipped a little bit on the road. So this is clearly a bipartisan supported line item, and I'm pleased with that, of course. So thank you. Any comments, questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Number 7.
Move that the capital appropriations for the high school renovation project be set at $8,978,092 to be funded from state grants.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I had a question.
Mike?
Was this signed by the governor yet?
I
No.
don't know that.
No.
So how can we put it in our budget if it's not?
It's a standalone item. It's like the other grants we get. If it doesn't materialize, it doesn't materialize.
We
It's
just take
separate
it
and
out.
distinct. It has no impact on the mill levy. It has no impact on anything else other than the high school project.
Okay.
I certainly talked to the delegation about this, and they've been assured, and there has been a conversation that I understand occurred between the delegation and the governor indicating it would be signed. If for any reason it wasn't signed and there was some derailment that's not expected, then obviously all the options that we previously discussed for covering this gap would be reintroduced. But this is a standalone, protects all the other functions, so I think we're good to approach it this way. Other questions? Yeah, Mike.
While I support the roughly $9 million to be included for additional funds for the high school, it is a priority of the towns, and I think with the vote a number of years ago, the will of the public is definitely to have a renovated high school, a top-notch high school. It's unfortunate, though, that we're at this situation where we have to ask the state for an additional $9 million waiver, or a waiver to get the additional money. I think it's not the fault of any one board, one council, one committee, but I think it's a fault of a number of pieces just slipping through the cracks, that this wasn't caught earlier, and that the renovations had to include asbestos abatement, PCPs. I really wish that those that were looking into the construction or reconstruction of the high school had seen this earlier, or had been tipped off about it earlier, and budgeted it accordingly for it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Contributions? Just a reminder on that one point, there were several factors I think that contributed, but one of which was, and I think we discussed this with the architect and the engineer as well as the general contractor, that subsequent to the engineering that was done and the submission of the estimates to the town, there were 2 changes in the way in which asbestos and PCT evaluations and requirements were made, which was a significant piece, not the entire amount, of course, but a pretty significant factor. Share that just for the benefit of those that did the engineering as well. So, motion and second in front of us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Thank you. Number 8.
Move that the total appropriations for library purposes be set at $1,876,700 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second.
Thank you. Questions about the library budget? I think we're pretty clear on that one. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Number 9.
Move that the total amount to be raised by taxes for the town, library, school, and capital and non-recurring road fund purposes combined be set at $80,458,300 for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I had a quick question for Jeff, I guess. Do you know the amount we took in taxes last year compared to this $80,458,300?
Should be on your revenue spreadsheet. The actual for 2013, 2012 was $73 million. And you've got to remember, there's a delinquency factor of 1.35 factored into that $80 million number.
Okay. So we are anticipating roughly, what was the number? Roughly $6 million more in tax revenue?
No, less than 5. Because you look at projected 2013-14. At the top of that, that's what was anticipated in the current year budget. But that number at the top doesn't include roads. The one at the bottom, this $80 million number does. So you get to add 607,000 to the $75 million number, which brings you up to about 76.5 from off the 80 million. So you're like 4 plus.
Okay.
Okay.
This, the town used a tax sale, if I'm not mistaken, recently to
Yes.
boost up revenue. Okay. Well, I think the state as well as the town are going in very similar directions, that we're banking on tax revenue to go up and anticipating it. I don't know. We saw the state project a $500 million surplus after their April 15th, the final, their big day of trying to calculate their tax revenue. That $500 million projected surplus had gone down to a $43 million surplus. I don't want to see Wethersfield go in that same direction where we're anticipating 80 million and yet not, getting the full amount. So
I agree. I would love to have a separate revenue stream other than property taxes. But in Connecticut, that's not going to happen. Not for local government.
no. So it's just a concern that I had. So I appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we,
Yeah, and I think that, making sure that you have your revenues adequately projected is important, especially when you're going to go to bond, when you're going to sell $43 million of bonds probably over the next 4 or 5 years. But if you look at the budget, we're expecting a collection rate on the current tax levy of 98.65%. In the last 10 years, we've never been below 98.79. So there's some conservatism there. And in terms of prior tax collection, you could see the projected for this year is 803,000. Yet and the prior year was 658,000. Yet we're only budgeting 525. So I think Jeff and Mike are budgeting conservatively, as they should, especially as we're about to go to market with 20-year bonds.
thank you, Jeff. We have a motion, a second in front of us. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
We have a
Abstentions?
roll call.
Really?
As long as it's all for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. That works.
Number 10.
Move that the general fund tax rate on all real and personal taxable property be set at 36.32 mils for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second.
Questions or comments about the mill rate? Seeing none, move to motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Abstentions? And finally, number 11.
That the capital and non-recurring roads fund tax rate on all real and personal taxable property be set at .42 mils for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion on the mill rate for the roads? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
Like to- Your budget's adopted,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
budget has been adopted. I want to thank again everybody that participated throughout this year on it. Appreciate the energy, the effort, the attendance at the discussions. Thank you for your contributions.
I'd like to make one comment.
Yes.
Or several.
Jeff.
I'd like to thank Mike O'Neill, who came in, it's not yours.
We can get you a copy, though.
I've
Dan.
got several, you can have as many as you want. Thank Mike O'Neill, who came in at the tail end of this and really took hold of it and made an excellent contribution to the project. Linda Savitsky, who has filled in for us twice as interim, who's done a fantastic job. She's not here this evening, but thank her. The entire finance department staff that broke apart every number again this year, and all the department heads that took a hard look at what they needed, what they wanted, and made tough decisions and made recommendations based on what they needed to get the job done. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the council's consideration of those requests.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Goes without saying that you and Mike did a terrific job, very helpful, particularly last week, the spreadsheet was very helpful for us, so. Thank you. I think I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.